Yes, it's time for another top 5 good and bad. This time we're picking on the 2024 Toyota GR86 or Subaru BRZ, which is basically the same car. Starting with the good. So number 5, I've got its rear-wheel drive with a limited slip differential. Now that doesn't seem like a big deal really, but it's actually hard to find a rear-wheel drive vehicle on the market, the new car market today, that has a limited slip differential. They're not very common anymore. You used to be able to get it with the Ford Falcons and the Holden Commodores and things, with sports packs and touring packs and all that sort of thing, or the upper spec models. But yeah, now there's nothing really out there apart from some of the German cars like the 3 Series and the C-Class and so on. Even those though, they don't really come with a limited slip differential. It's more like an electronic locking, or it's some sort of traction control system where it avoids or it tries to block single wheel spin, whereas this comes with a proper mechanical limited slip differential. What does that mean exactly? Well, basically both rear wheels are spinning at the same time. Kind of anyway. There is still slip, that's why it's called a limited slip. But yeah, essentially you're getting both left and right spinning at the same time, and that's what you want. You don't want to go around a corner and the inside wheel spins faster than the outside wheel, or vice versa for that matter. Some of the really clever EVs out there, they can actually spin the outside wheel faster than the inside, and that helps rotate the vehicle around the corner. But for someone that just wants a raw driving experience, a limited slip diff is perfect. It means good balance, plenty of traction, and if it is going to slip, it's going to kick the tail out if you've got the stability and traction control completely off. Number 4, manual transmission. Again, not that popular in this modern age. A brand new vehicle with a manual transmission is very, very rare. So good on Toyota and Subaru for offering a manual with the latest generation model. It has been around now since a couple of years now, 2022 I think it first came out. But still, that's a pretty new model, pretty new vehicle. So to continue with a manual, awesome stuff. Number 3. I think Toyota and Subaru have done a good job. They are pretty common, so you see them and you don't really think anything of it. But if you were to see one of these in the wild, a few years ago or something like that, or if they weren't so common, it actually stand out because it's a low-slung, sporty coupe. I think it looks very consistent, front and back and sides. It's got muscular wheel arches and so on. So it does have a good traditional sports coupe profile, in my opinion. It is very low to the ground as well. It's only 1.3 meters tall, which is, that's pretty low. And it's got a very long bonnet, which is traditional of a sports car. Number 2. It's a 2.4 litre now, so up 400 cc's. It's still a naturally aspirated, basically Subaru engine, flat 4. It does have Toyota's D4S direct and multi-point injection system, but it's bigger capacity, so more power and more torque. As anyone knows that's driven the previous model, the 2 litre, it just had very little low-end torque. In fact, peak torque was available, 205 newton meters was available at 6,400 RPM. So you needed to achieve those revs before getting maximum torque. Whereas now you're getting 250 newton meters, so that's 45 newton meters more, but it's available from 3,700 RPM. So you don't need to rev it so much, and you get a lot more torque even though you're not revving it. So it's just a much more livable and an enjoyable engine. Not only that, the old flat spot has been ironed out. So the previous generation had a flat spot engineered into the engine mapping to try and conserve fuel. Basically at about 3,500, 4,000 RPM, there'd be a dip. So we put one on a dyno on the previous channel, and you could see this definite dip in the torque curve and the power curve, and then it would rise back up again. But what that meant was when you're driving it, you get, you floor it, and then it's revving out nice and freely, and then suddenly it just drops off for a minute, and then it comes back on again. So that's been completely eradicated now. So you're just free revving all the way through to 7,000 RPM too. So even though it is a kind of a stroker engine, I guess you could call it, it's still a high revving unit, so you can enjoy all the way up to 7,000 RPM, and that's where peak power is as well. So if you really want peak power, you need to rev it all the way up, just like the previous model. As a result, it is a lot quicker than the previous model too, and not just when you're absolutely caning it. You can drive it up a mountain or something like that, only use half throttle, for example, and still get really good performance, good G-force, good acceleration. But if you are absolutely flogging it, you can achieve 0 to 100 in around 6 seconds or 6.5 seconds. Quickest I've ever achieved is 6.18 seconds in the 2022 model. I did try it again with this model that's featured in this video now, and the best I could do was 6.4, but if you keep going, you can get better. You've just got to time it really well with the gear shift and clutch, but I'll get to more of the gear shift later on. But overall, it's a great engine. It's a perfect amount of power and torque for this style of vehicle. You can have a lot of fun in this. It only weighs, what's this one? 1,229 kilograms tare for the GTS, top GTS manual. 1,200 kilograms is absolutely nothing these days. Now that brings us to the number one best thing about the GR86, of course in my opinion, and that's the handling. You can take sporty vehicles for a drive along a mountain road and there's always a little hiccup somewhere, whether it's the steering or it hits a bump mid-corner, it just gets a bit unsettled, whatever it is, there's always something. Whereas the GR86 and the BRZ, you can flog these things down a mountain or up a mountain road, hit bumps and so on, and they're just so stable and sure-footed. You can kick the tail out if you want to, but if you don't want to, you can drive these along a kind of race line style of driving, and they just grip up and just go. They're really good driver's car. You can tell that the engineers behind this are proper driving fans, because you can't make this stuff by accident. It's just the very fine tuning and the little tweaks that you walk away from it thinking, wow, that just does exactly what I want. I know these cars have a bit of a stereotype with young people and P-platers and so on, but take one for a drive. Go by yourself, go to some deserted mountain road, forget about everybody else, and you'll see that just how good these are to drive. They have just absolutely nailed the handling, in my opinion. It is perfect. Now we get to the bad points. Like all of these top 10 good and bad or top 5 good and bad videos that I do, I'm not suggesting that this is a bad car overall. It's just because I list 5 bad things doesn't mean I think it's bad overall. I think these are superb car. It really is an awesome driver's car. I'm just listing the things that I think could be improved slightly. But some of them, as you'll see, it probably doesn't even matter to most people. Number 5, the rear seat. It's just way too small. It really is. It's like a lot of sports cars, two-door sports cars. The rear seats are pretty much redundant. There's no point in having them there. The only reason they are there most of the time is because they fall into a different category. So if it's a 4-seat vehicle, it goes through different rules and regulations and so on. So if Subaru and Toyota were to remove the seats, the rear seats, it would fall into a separate category, which just makes it harder with production and so on. In reality though, these rear seats are pretty much pointless. Unless the front passenger and driver, for that matter, are willing to roll the seat forward quite a bit to provide some clearance. Even then, your head's pretty much hitting the rear windscreen or the tailgate, the hatch lid, whatever you want to call it, and the legroom is still very, very limited. Trailing on from that, number 4, boot space. So this is a 2-door sports car. It's not a family SUV, so it's not meant to be for carrying the shopping and the kids' sports gear and all that. But with just 237 litres, it's limited in what you can do with this. You could take it for a weekend away with just a couple, which is, what this car's designed for anyway. It's not meant to be a 4-seater, really, in my opinion. So you can't expect it to have 4-seater style of luggage space. But if you look at it on paper, against some other vehicles, similar price, similar performance, it is a small boot. Number 3. Now this is an interesting one, safety tech. The automatic comes with a bit more safety tech than the manual. This doesn't really bother me because if I'm after a driver's car, I don't really care about driver monitoring cameras and all that sort of crap. I don't need that in a car like this. I'm going to drive it on the weekends or drive it to the track. But as a professional car tester dude, I need to look at this sort of stuff a bit more critically. And there are a lot of vehicles in this class, or at least similar sort of spec and price, that do come with more safety tech than these. On that note, it has not been rated by ANCAP either. The previous model was 5 stars, but the new model is unrated at the moment. So if your criteria is 5 stars, then this is going to be crossed off your list straight away. Number 2, So I'm going to blame Subaru for this, even though it's an ASEAN gearbox. And ASEAN is a company partly owned by Toyota, so you might as well say it's a Toyota gearbox. But if you're going to say that, you might as well say Subaru as well is partly owned by Toyota. Toyota actually owns 20% of Subaru anyway, so it's kind of all, it doesn't really matter where it comes from. But yeah, it does have a notchy feel, and it reminds me of pretty much all Subarus of the past as well. They always have a bit of a notchy feel. They don't feel nice like a MX-5 or something like that. If you want to change gear quickly, do a performance run or something, you really need to be precise, especially with the clutch. Make sure you push the clutch all the way down, and then you can just nail it into second and third. Third to fourth is easy, and even fourth to fifth isn't too bad, but first to second and second to third, you've really got to just kind of take your time while you're in a rush. If you've got a nice sounding engine, it almost doesn't matter how quick the vehicle is. It really enhances the driving experience, in my opinion anyway. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. What do you think? Do you think the engine sound is important in a good drive? Because in this, it's just harsh. It's got this hollowy sound. It is better than the previous generation, in my opinion. It doesn't sound quite as tinny. Extra 400 cc's, just give it a bit more beef, a bit more bass to it. But yeah, Subaru has made good sounding engines before. Look at the old original WRXs. They sound good, at that throbbing sort of soundtrack. These days with direct injection, variable valve timing, very high compression ratio. So this has a compression ratio of 12.5 to 1, which is very high for just a few years ago. Compared with today's engines, it's pretty standard. But 12.5, that does help create more efficient power, but it can make the engine sound a bit sort of rough and a bit highly strung, but not really in a good way. The only other way to fix it could be to add a turbocharger. So turbochargers kind of act like a bit of a muffler because the air has to change its speed or change its rate as it goes through like a fan, basically. So it does usually create a more bassy soundtrack, and it mutes the soundtrack as well. So if this had a turbocharged engine, it might actually sound a little bit better, but then you'd lose that sort of high revving 7,000 RPM appeal to it. It's not that kind of car, really. There we go, the top 5 good and bad things about the Toyota GR86. Again, these 5 bad things I'm not saying it's a bad car, I'm just saying they're the kind of issues that I would fix to make it absolutely perfect. Let me know in the comments, have I missed something? Perhaps there's something good about it that I've missed or something bad about it. Do you own one and there is something that is really bad about it that just makes it, a nightmare to live with every day? Please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.